I wasn't sure what I was going to read tonight, but I was having a conversation recently with someone about how times change and humans don't. And so I looked up a bunch of stuff that I wrote years and years ago, and some of it is, actually all of it's still relevant horrifically enough. This one was written in 2004. It's called The American Scheme. I woke last night in a sweat, eyes gaped open and throat tight shut. I awoke from the American dream. My original fear was that I wouldn't know what was going on. Upon waking, a new fear was confirmed, the fear of knowing and not having the power to speak. My mouth had been sewn shut by the patriot acts of the powers that be. My audience was rendered deaf as the freedom of speech, or even my freedom to speak, was rendered obsolete in the aftermath of smoking towers. Now we're living in a world of smoky mirrors, and no one seems to remember that John Kerry was never against the war. The hippies and the boomers raised the standard on the education-occupation link. Now most of the class of '03 is helping with a different sort of occupation because we don't have the money to be progressive. Plato once said, "Be wary of any enterprise requiring new clothes," and this sent me into a panic. I don't want to march for war and likewise for peace. I see regime change starts at home, stuck to the bumper of a black SUV, but when I asked that lady for change, she said she didn't have any. Now I'm sitting on the sidewalk thinking about government, listening to Dylan and realizing no basement medicines will shut out new realizations, and the thought crossed in my mind, maybe this is the way it's always been. This is called Thoughts on America. I wrote this in 2013, apparently. A roar broke the silent dissonance of head shaking in a conversation about America that I was in. This voice railed against the country whose pride ran deep in her blood, and with this voice I agreed. But it did cause concern when she lumped the red, the white, the black, and the blue in with the rusty freighters and rolling hills that I've come to love. And the concern brought forth lessons from my own teaching. Stories of 15th century frontiersmen tramping around the great wilderness with not even a flag to their name, for they had rejected even that. And memories of bloodline relatives that fought for the type of independence that the Declaration wasn't offering. And independence from having unknown men armed with Bibles translated to the 19th power telling them what's right and just. Now here we are today, lying in a grave that is no longer fresh, whose tombstone reads, democracy. All because we have not yet understood that a flag is not a country, but a symbol of control. And a country, now there lies something to love. And it's easiest to love in the labored breathing of a mountaintop view or in a toast from the top of a water tower overlooking the Mississippi. It can be seen in the wave of the conductor as he pulls out of the yard, or heard in the hissing of his wheels when you have that moment of realization that yes, those trains are actually going somewhere. It can be grasped in the handshake of a homeless man who is not unlike your forefathers, a castaway, tramping about the wilderness with not even a flag or a prayer, but two hands that are ready to work for change. This is the last one I'm doing tonight. Wow. I wrote this in 2016. It's called A Race Against Time. I was painting a portrait the other night when I figured this out, so let me paint you a picture real quick. See, I'm a writer, not a very good artist, and I'm overly clumsy and I'm far too bulky for my own good. I have a boxer's hands to go with a boxer's grip, which is the worst way to grab a paintbrush unless you want to tip over your paints. And that's exactly what I did. I tipped over that little tray thing with the little slots for all the different colors of paint to keep them separated. They went tumbling to the floor and they all mixed together and became one. And there was no more white, no more purple, no more yellow or red. There were no lines to color in or outside of it because the paint was everywhere. And I left it to dry instead of calling it a mess that needs to be cleaned up. I gave it a chance to become its own thing, and it didn't. It just remained sprawling on the floor. But at least it was given a chance. And then I turned on the TV to see that cowboy has-been from Gran Torino talking about how this was a pussy generation, and how everyone is too politically correct. He said we used to not be afraid of words like nigger and spick, and we walked around proudly in our neighborhoods, and I immediately turned that fucking bullshit off. Not to ignore it, but because I couldn't respond to it. I've been screaming at my TV for 34 years now, and I'm determined that either they can't hear me, or they just don't give a shit. It might be both. But I want to scream. I want to tell them that people still aren't afraid to use those words, they just choose not to. I want to tell them that they still walk around proudly in their own neighborhoods, and they're even more proud that he doesn't live here. But all that'll lead to is an us versus them mentality, which eventually leads to wars. We can't have a war, not based on this. And there are people out there who want that, and there are a lot of them. And they are using those words, and they're walking those neighborhoods, and they're posting on alt-right message boards, and talking about how the white man is going extinct, and how they are the minority. They whitewash phrases like white supremacy to become racial purists, and I realize that they just gave us the answer. We need to spill the paint. We need to fall in love with people of color, any color, every color. We need to spill the paint, mix it together, and make new colors. And it's going to take a long time. But anything worth doing is worth doing right. And there will be no more primary colors and secondary colors. There will only be people. But it's not enough to mix the colors. We have to clean up our acts too. We have to raise our children of all colors right and tell them that no color is better than another, and that you can actually draw a painting with just one color, because that is a choice. You can surround yourself with just one color and only use just one color your entire life. But what kind of a life is that when you walk down the street and the roses are gray and the trees are gray and the gray men at the bar are hitting on gray women outside and the bartender is pouring Grey Goose for everyone, trying to wash down the fact that something is definitely wrong? We need red roses and green trees and black men with white women and Asian women with white men, and everyone needs to just start mixing and loving to mix until there's nothing left to stereotype, nothing left to minimize, undermine, and scrutinize. And if we don't do this soon, I'm worried there might be nothing left to scrutinize at all. My name's Eric Warren.
That was fucking awesome.